Okay, welcome back. So, as you recall from the last video, we went over the very, very basic steps, the broad strokes of the very origins of theater as we have come to know it. We talked about the celebrations of the god Dionysus, thus leading to the choral hymns, the dithyrambs being sung, which would tell the stories of ancient Greek heroes, and then Thespis stepping out of that chorus, taking on the characteristics of someone in the story, and pretending to be that person. Again, I know none of this sounds revolutionary, but nothing sounds revolutionary, several hundred years removed from when it originated. For the first time somebody did that, it blew people's minds. It was like going to see Jurassic Park and seeing the dinosaur on the screen. So, skipping ahead, again, condensing this down, with Thespis stepping out of the chorus and presenting a new way to present stories, not just in a third person, but actually from a first person perspective. Well, now this opened the floodgates for a whole new form of art, playwriting. And what would eventually happen, again, broad strokes, is the celebration of the god Dionysus would morph into what we now call the city Dionysa. And this would be a spring festival, and one of the centerpieces of that festival would be the theater competition, the playwriting and theater competition. The Greeks loved and originated the two major kinds of theater, and everybody should probably know what those are. If you've ever seen the drama mass, you've got the comedy and the tragedy. Okay? The playwrights would submit 4 plays to the City Dionysa Play Festival, 3 tragedies and 1 comedy. The Greeks were very, very specific in what they liked and what they wanted from their tragedies. We're only going to talk about tragedies in this video because they are extremely specific with points that I really want to make sure that you understand, because it's information that you're going to need going forward. Okay? So for this, I just want to talk about the elements of Greek tragedy. The action begins near the climax or high point of the story, with the characters already in the midst of their struggles. So imagine walking into a movie that has already been running for an hour, and all the characters have already been introduced, their world has already been introduced, the complication has already been introduced, and you just watch the struggle to the resolution on. That is essentially what the Greeks wanted. They didn't want to waste time with character introductions. They wanted to get right to the meat of the story. Very few characters and only 3 actors. So if you look at any of the Greek plays, but the Greek tragedies especially, you will never see more than 3 speaking roles on stage at the same time. What they would do is you would have 1 actor playing the main role and 2 other actors playing every other role. So there would be no more than 3 characters on stage at any one time. The play occurs within a short span of time, frequently 24 hours or less, and usually takes place in 1 location. All right, so this is a really important factor. This is something that's going to come back further down the road, but 2 things to point out here. First of all, the play takes place within a short span of time. The play happens in real time, basically. There are no jumps forward. There are no flashbacks. The play begins and the action unfurls in real time. For however long it takes you, the audience, to watch it, that is how long it takes the characters on stage to live it. Okay? So no time jumps. The second one there is also very important, that it usually takes place in one location. This is pretty universal. Most Greek plays are the ones that we have that have survived. All of the action happens in one location, one spot, usually a throne room. So there is no jumping to another scene, there is no jumping to another location. It all happens in one spot. Now let's take a look at that second bit there, because that's leading in to another bit of vocabulary I want to make sure you all have. The audience is provided with a great deal of background information, usually by the chorus. This is known as exposition. Exposition, background information that the audience needs to know to understand the action of the play. Now, let's be very specific and very clear about this. Exposition is different from backstory or revelations. Exposition is just what are the bare bones that you, the audience, need to know going into the play to understand what is happening. This can be who are the major characters, what are their relationships to one another, where are we, what is going on right at this moment in the world of the play. So that's all exposition. Everything that happened before the action of the play started that the audience needs to know. Now, when I say this is different from revelations or backstory, that means that in some plays, we'll talk about one of them here in a little bit, the audience will receive new information as the play goes on so they can put the puzzle pieces together. Okay? That's a revelation or that's additional backstory. Exposition is what you need to know right at the beginning to understand what is going to happen next. Finally, the story focused on someone high in society, a king, a wealthy person, etc., who falls from grace. Now, this is something you really need to make sure you understand. You would not find a Greek tragedy wherein your hero was a poor person or a commoner. The Greek society structure and the Greek dramatic structure was very clearly divided along class lines. Tragedies were about the rich and powerful. Summing it up, the belief being that a person who was, living on the street and eating dirt didn't have much worse that could happen to them, dramatically speaking, at least according to the Greeks. Now, we know that is not true, but from the Greek perspective, the subject of the tragedy had to be someone high in society, usually royalty, who would fall from grace and lose everything, usually by their own actions, because of a mistake they made, a choice that they made. It would cause them to lose everything in their lives to unravel with only themselves to blame. One other element that classifies a Greek tragedy in most instances. Now, when we say tragedy, the first thing that comes to most people's minds is, of course, everybody dying. That's how we kind of classify tragedy in the broad strokes. And that is not untrue. In Greek tragedies, a lot of people died, usually fairly gruesomely. But now here's something to keep in mind, especially as we proceed forward in time and new cultures and new civilizations with new belief structures start playing with the format. In most Greek tragedies, the person who died is not the main character. In most Greek tragedies, the main character, the person the audience has been following, the person the tragedy has been happening to, they do not die in the end. Most people around them die, but they do not. Now, a question I want you all to think about, and something that I want to talk about when we get to class, is why? What does that say about a society? What does that say about them dramatically? Why do you think it is that the main character is left alive while everyone else dies around them? So, questions to be thought of. Please make sure that you've gone through this list of elements of a Greek tragedy and that you understand them. If you have any questions, please make sure that you bring it up while we are in our daily group meeting. That's the time to bring those up. Make sure you are clear on these. Make sure you're clear on all of them. You're going to need this information going forward. Okay? When we come back, we will talk about the other form of Greek entertainment.